I hope.
Sort of.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
anyway, we are at the beginning of chapter 3, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so last time we met, I briefly went over what's in 1 and what's in 2, chapter 1 and chapter 2. So chapter 3, as I mentioned, it's basically Shantideva's style of Shantideva's tradition of giving the Bodhisattva, the generating of the Bodhisattva vow. Yeah, so this is the chapter 3. So the translation that I have, the title of this chapter is saying how to take hold of bodhicitta. So in terms of bodhicitta, we also looked at how last time we looked at how primarily Shantideva here says it consists of two parts, and the two parts is the aspiration bodhicitta part, and then the action or the engagement bodhicitta part. So this chapter 3 is the part of that ritual, part of the ceremony, part of the formal process of generating or taking hold of bodhicitta. And also part of this ceremony is what's given in chapter 2. And I pointed out how in chapter 2, the content is such that the title of the chapter could easily also be translated as making offerings. So there are really kind of two types of offerings. The first part of that chapter, it's more obviously offerings. And these offerings are not just like physical offerings, but they are also offerings that you imagine. As for the offerings that you imagine, maybe on some level it sounds kind of make-believe, but in the Buddhist context, it's actually pointing to how the Buddha made this point about how everything begins, right, from the level of mind. Now, we may not see that clearly right now. That's just simply because we don't pay attention to this very fact that everything begins on the mind. Everything begins on some level of intentionality, in fact. Again, we may not see, the intentionality so clearly, and then we say, oh, no, I didn't intend that. But often, when you say, oh, I didn't mean that, or I didn't intend that, often, not always, but often is simply not really seeing clearly, the subtleties of intentions. In fact, in the karma course that I've been doing, just started 2 weeks now, I gave the examples, an example that I read somewhere that said, how, until recently, it seems perfectly acceptable for men to, give unsolicited comments and quote unquote compliments to women, random women they don't know, catcalling, right? So, well, I meant it as a compliment. Well, that may seem like what your intention is, but you're not looking deeply enough to see all the levels of intentionality. Right? So in making offerings, it also starts, from the level of mind. And so the imagined offerings are said to be as powerful, if not in some ways more powerful than the actual offerings. because it's training in intentionality, in paying attention to intentionality. Then, of course, right now, like we may be able to more, well, not maybe, we definitely have the ability to increase vast intentionality. Then we can increase vast materiality. I would like to give everyone $1 million. It's easier to try to train that intentionality, for sure, right? Than to say, well, here's $1 million. I mean, for most of us, I think even giving $1 to everyone literally is impossible. Right? But intentionality, we can. We can train the motivation, we can train that. Then the second part of chapter 2 is another type of offering. Not so obviously offering, but this is the offering or the giving up of what? Of patterns and programmings of behavior that are not conducive to happiness, but instead just the very opposite, conducive to creating suffering. So here it's called confession. Confession, or at least the version I have is translated as confession. More literally, it's laying aside. And even more literally, in another compound, it's revealing and laying aside. To expose, not expose other people's, dirty laundry. Expose your own to, yourself and to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So no, there isn't a confession booth in Buddhist centers. But, to be able to reveal, to expose to yourself, for yourself, to see more clearly, right? This programming, this autopilot, that, by the way, didn't come accidentally. They come as the result of habitual patterns that we build up. So the trouble, so to say, with the karma or the actions that are negative, and the advantage of creating karma that is positive, is that both leave behind. In one case, you could say a stench. In another case, you could say the fragrance. They leave behind these smells, this odor or perfume that then become that which shapes habits, programming. So if we program it right, then we perfume it with beauty, with happiness. We don't program it right, then we add to this stench, So here, in order to take hold of bodhicitta, we have to give up. Give up narrowness. So that's what all the more conventional offerings are about. Give up narrowness. Give up stinginess. The second kind of giving up these unhealthy programming, unhealthy habits. Then when we give up, when we clear this space, then we will be able to take hold of bodhicitta. So now chapter 3. Let me read from chapter 3. It's a beautiful ceremony, actually. With joy, I celebrate the virtue that relieves all beings from the sorrows of the states of loss, exulting in the happy states enjoyed by those who yet are suffering. So here, this quality of joy, yeah, I want you to kind of take note, is one that we try to cultivate. It doesn't mean, like we walk around with this force, sense of like, oh, I'm so joyful, oh, I'm so happy. But it is something that we can allow in. It's something that we can cultivate, At the same time, there is too much, I think, on the pop culture level. I mean, certain segments of pop culture, like the happiness cult, I think we may have gone too far in that direction. I think Buddhists maybe are complicit in this, gone too far in the direction of, happiness, 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 where if you're a good person, you should be happy, I mean, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're not. I think even more importantly, it's like having big enough space, for happy moments and not so happy moments and sad moments, they can all turn up, and you don't move, you don't get thrown off, that's even more important than, happy, 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 But joy is important, to cultivate, to let in. Just curious. Let's look at the footnote 45. What it has to say. According to the Buddhist teachings, the experience of beings in samsara falls into 6 broad categories. Oh yes, these are the 6 realms of existence. So the 3 lower realms, the hell realms, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm, are the 3 lower realms within the 6 realms. And then there's the realm, the human realm, the demigods, and the gods. So within these 6 realms, the 3 lower realms are mostly occupied with suffering. Their kind of baseline experience is suffering. The 3 higher realms are called higher realms because between happiness and suffering, it's more balanced, you could say. And then the higher you go, the more predominance of happiness. But even those types of happiness, they are in fact temporary happiness, and happiness that is fragile. Happiness that is fragile, happiness that is temporary, and they're not lasting. Whereas there is Buddhahood, the state of Buddhahood, where it's a different kind of happiness. It's the happiness that arises when all the mental defilements, the afflictive emotions, are gone, finished. And so this continue to kind of rejoice. Basically, 2, 3, is to recall, like second verse, the stores of virtue, which is the cause of attaining the awakened state. And then the freedom won, that means the great fortune that you and I are now in, that we have the leisure, we have the freedom to do this, for example. We don't have government or internet providers that say, oh, you cannot discuss these things. We are going to cut off your connectivity if you discuss these things. And then you bring to mind, the Buddhahood, the state of Buddhas, of all those protectors, and you delight in them. Three is a half verse, and 4 of bodhicitta, the enlightened attitude. Such is my delight and joy. And so this is called rejoicing. And this ceremony preceding the actual taking of bodhicitta has 7 elements. And so that's another way to organize chapter 2 and chapter 3. Is what some of you may know as the 7 limbs, or the 7 parts. Puja. Puja means, the act of an act of devotion, an act of, it's really more than that, because, okay, what are the 7 elements? It begins with paying homage with body, speech, and mind. Paying homage, meaning expressing admiration, expressing a desire to be like the Buddhas. Paying homage, honoring them not in the theistic sense of honoring God, right? Oh, God is great, God is wonderful, God is faithful. But more like, these godlike qualities have been attained by these individuals, whereby in my following the teachings of these individuals, I too can gain these godlike qualities. So paying homage. And paying homage is also an act of commitment. You're committing to gaining these qualities yourself. So this is the crucial difference between more superficial sense of like paying homage or praying to or bowing down to, all those are just kind of cultural expressions of recognizing the qualities and making a commitment to gaining those qualities ourselves. So that's the first, paying homage. Second is making offerings. Third is the confessing, the laying, the exposing and putting aside. Fourth is rejoicing. So these 4 verses at the beginning of chapter 3 is rejoicing. Then 5 is requesting the Buddhas to, verse 5, to please illuminate this world. Illuminate this world how? By teaching us, guiding us. So this is called requesting the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma, to set into motion the wheel of Dharma. A poetic way of saying, please teach, please guide, please show by your example. 6 is beseeching them not to pass into nirvana. Don't leave us, here it says, wandering in blindness, but stay with us. 7th is dedicating, kind of like focusing our good works, so to say, focusing the effort that we are putting into this. What is this for? This is for the alleviation of the pain of every living being. May the pain of every living being be scattered and destroyed. Then verse 8, starting from there, is some beautiful verses about how, as for this benefiting of beings, what does that look like? What does that look like? Starting from verse 8 to 22. It's a beautiful section there. For all those ailing in the world, until their every sickness has been healed, may I myself become for them the doctor, nurse, the medicine itself. Raining down a flood of flood and drink, may I dispel the ills of thirst and famine. And in the eons marked by scarcity and want, may I myself appear as drink and sustenance. For sentient beings, poor and destitute, may I become a treasure ever plentiful, and lie before them closely in their reach, a varied source of all that they might need. My body thus, and all my goods besides, and all my merits gain and to be gained, I give them all, and do not count the cost to bring about the benefit of beings. And so here, of course, the full ability to what is described here, it said that we can't do that until we are Buddhists. Buddhas, not Buddhist. We can't fully do what is being expressed here until we are Buddhas. But the commentaries also say, but it's also a mistake to think that I can't do some of this to some degree, to the best of my ability now. That would also be a mistake to say, oh, I can't, Because again, like this, I can't, the intentionality behind I can't may not be, right, as pure or skillful as we think it is sometimes. And so we need to learn. I mean, we should not have anyone force us, or, like peer pressure, or Dharma center peer pressure, But we should very honestly, I think, kind of force ourselves sometimes to see where our limit is. Not out of like some kind of macho, but rather with the understanding that, we can build up this strength, this ability, this capacity, and and see ourselves as, like spiritual warriors, maybe athletes, that we can be spiritual athletes, which means then hard work, has its payoffs. No doubt, I think most of us, come to Buddhist teachings, come to Buddhist center because we're looking for relief, relief from whatever that is stressing us, that is weighing down on us. And so many of us are mostly looking to, right? Really, truly understandable. We don't need to pretend that's not the case. We don't need to shame that for sure. But we also need to see that the Buddha is offering us more than that. Come ye all who are, heavy burdened and heavy laden, and I will offer you relief. Yes, like Jesus, Buddha is also saying that. But Buddha is also saying, but that's temporary, what I can give you. What anyone can give you in terms of relief is temporary. You want something lasting, you have to actualize that. You have to, and you can. You have to, and you can. So anyway, there's some really beautiful verses here. The actual taking of that vow, that aspiration, the taking hold of bodhicitta is 23 and 24. Verse 23 and 24. In fact, it's those two. Simple as that. Throughout Mahayana Buddhist traditions, this vow has been expressed in different words. These two verses are the most famous in the Tibetan tradition. Just as all the Buddhas of the past have brought forth the awakened mind, and in the precepts of the Bodhisattva, step by step, abode and trained, abided in and trained in. Likewise, for the benefit of beings, I will bring to birth the awakened mind, and in those precepts, step by step, I will abide and train myself. So 23 and 24, they refer to both the aspiration, brought forth the awakened mind, and the action aspect, training in the precepts, training in the example. So 23 is saying, just as they have done it. 24 say, likewise now for the benefit of beings, I am going to do it. That's 23 and 24. And 25 onwards to the end is in the rituals today for giving this vow, for generating this vow. It's called the yourself now rejoicing in what you have done, and also you now welcoming others to come to you. We could say it's like a way of saying, now bring it on. So that's the overview, yeah, of 33, for example. Living beings, wayfarers upon life's paths, who wish to taste the riches of contentment, here before you is the supreme bliss. Here, O ceaseless travelers, is your fulfillment. And so today, with the sight of all protectors, meaning all Buddhas, I summon beings, calling them to Buddhahood. Until that state is reached, to every earthly joy, may gods and demigods and all the rest rejoice. And so not only have you embarked on this, you're saying, now all the rest of you, now join me on this journey. And it is said, this makes all the gods and demigods, all those who have the power to witness what you just did, they all become happy, they all become joyful. So that's briefly chapter 3. In the Tibetan tradition, this ceremony is given, and often there's a preceptor who gives it, kind of acting in the capacity of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But you can also take this by invoking the presence of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and you can take hold of this yourself. I recently read something that about one of the teachers in the lineage that I'm a part of, one of the senior teachers, maybe perhaps the most famous of them now, Garchen Rinpoche, who lives now in Arizona. He's lived there for at least 20 years now, in his late 80s. He said that his teacher said to him, you know that you are qualified, truly qualified, to give, to be this kind of preceptor for the Bodhisattva vow. How do you know, you are qualified to give it, and that your acting as a preceptor definitely will have a positive impact on those that you give to, is when you are able to care about those who want to murder you. Yeesh. To genuinely care about and be concerned about those who want to murder you. That you want to benefit those who want to murder you. And this is not someone speaking cheaply, He was in a Chinese prison for 20 years simply for being a Lama, for being a Tibetan Lama. He was thrown in prison, forced with hard labor for 20 years. Otherwise, words are cheap, But Rinpoche lived through the worst of what happened in Tibet. Friends, family, monastery, murdered, destroyed, and then himself thrown in prison for 20 years. Now, it's not saying, if others act as preceptor, there's no benefit. But it is saying, like that is the essence. Like, can we genuinely, not just turn the other cheek, which is really good, not just pray for our enemies, but in blunt terms, do we yet have the capacity to care for people that, that we know they're planning to murder us? Yeesh. Chapter 3, yeah, so.
My thought about that is, he must have had a daily chance to practice that in the jail for 20 years.
Oh, yes. And I can tell you this. I think I mentioned this. Cannot remember when I said this. I mean, not that I'm going to broadcast this, Gajen Rinpoche came to the US 25 years ago. Yeah. This is not said, to detract from, Rinpoche at all. But 25 years ago, you could tell, like, if the topic of the Chinese, his captors, comes up, you could tell that he has this kind of resentment. And I don't tell this to take away from, but in fact to say, look, how wonderful, He changed. Yeah, that he had that resentment in some ways it was reassuring to me, like, okay, you're not some alien from outer space. You're like me. But now I believe he really has become that person that, you know, cares about the anyone and everyone, and including those who are, making plans to murder him. I believe, that now he has become that, and not in some mysterious cave somewhere in Tibet, in Arizona. The last 20 years, he's working on that.
I want to say something about the joy
Yeah.
thing at the beginning.
Right,
That
right.
my teacher said that if you get stuck in your practice, that's because there's no joy in it.
Mhm.
And we're such Puritans and good girls and boys, we're gonna finish that number no matter what, blah blah blah. And then
Yeah,
you can't,
yeah,
right? Can't do it. It's like that. And so the way I get the joy back, so to speak, is to think about the miracle really of those guys like him
Mhm.
coming all the way from where they came,
Yes,
from their prison cells to Arizona or to Little Rock or to, wherever, and sharing their
yes.
deepest treasure with us, their most valued treasure, which they didn't have to share with us, not like they do. They've opened, back at home, you
Yes.
didn't get these teachings.
Mhm.
Yeah, you had to work hard to be able to get these teachings.
Mhm.
And yet here we are, like they're all on the internet, you know? So anyway,
Yeah, I think got to be careful. At least, I think, like I said, I also don't want to promote like the tyranny of joy and happiness.
yeah,
Because there's so much like this whole image, right? Like you're not okay unless you're walking around. There's something very oppressive and burdensome about that because it's about image, right? So
yeah,
that as an important caveat, I think at the very least what we can do is to guard against unwittingly, unknowingly getting dragged down.
yeah,
And why? Why we should guard against that? Because I believe the way media is structured and payoffs for media is to emphasize that. Across right wing, left wing, everyone is telling you things are going to hell.
right.
The different wings are offering different visions of how to stop that. Mm. But that offering part, we often don't get there.
Yeah,
We're all stuck on everything is going to hell. And so it's so easy to get dragged down. Mm. So if you don't like this incoming president, then the next 4 years, you're more likely to get dragged down, right? The last 4 years, for the people who don't like this incoming president, the last 4 years, it's them that, went through 4 years of being dragged down. We have to be able to see, like I'm not saying there's no difference between these two. Clearly, there are differences, and depending on where you come from, you see the differences in different terms. But what is similar is uh, we have to be vigilant to guard against mm, joy and happiness being yanked out of us, and we don't even realize. Not just actually not yanked out of us. Even that, I want to modify that by saying the opportunity is open and then we dump it out. The yank out of us still has that thing about, oh, it's them doing it to me. You know? Like, oh, the media is out to get you, out to trick you, out to. No. At most, they open the window, And instead of like when they open the window, instead of like, fresh air is coming in, we like throw out the things that we like. So guard against that.
Some of us were talking about this concept, especially as it pertains to the media, yesterday in
Yeah.
Dharmata
Uh-huh.
practice.
Uh-huh.
And one thing that always, I'm relatively new to Buddhism as a
Uh-huh.
practice. And so one thing that I question is how to engage with equanimity in the face of media and just the general
Mhm.
anxiety that society puts on people.
Mhm. Mhm. We have to have the long view, really. That's why we say, it takes 3 incalculable eons to attain Buddhahood. Yeah. And what's that all about, Yeah, we can learn, okay, how long is 1 eon? Then how long is 1 great eon? And then how long is 1 incalculable eon? La la la. Well, may be good to know some of that, but the more important thing is, what does it mean to say it takes 3 incalculable eons to become Buddha? It means we need to take the long view. What is 4 days? What is 4 weeks? What's 4 months? What's 4 years? What's even 40 years? Nothing. Really, nothing. And and then we need to understand change, impermanence. Good things, bad things, they all change. Whatever good you have secured, For some of us, I will show my hand. Maybe not so surprising to you. The 8 years of Obama, I thought, once we have tasted good, surely all of us will continue to be good. Ha ha! What conceit, What delusion? Because the afflictive emotions and the mental defilements never went away. In each of us, in every of us. Yeah. So having really clear kind of, yeah, like the capacity to care, to engage, to be skillful, right? Need not happen in a context where you are triggered, where you are anxious, where you so want to save everyone. But with clear understanding, And that understanding has very much to do with Buddha pointing out, how things come about. Interdependence, causes and conditions, change, impermanence, uncertainty. Then, at the same time, the power of vows, the power of aspirations, the power of practice, the power of being liberated in a moment's time is, is not contradicted by it takes 3 incalculable eons to be liberated. Those two are not opposed and not in conflict. If you are not so, kind of trapped in linear time, so to say. Not that linear time at the same time, we're not saying, oh, throw that out. Therefore, there are teachings of karma, past, present, future, past life, this life, future lives. Therefore, there's also teachings, on the other hand, the lack of an abiding self that goes from lifetime to lifetime, the lack of an abiding self, even from this moment to the next moment. They are said to be two sides of the same coin. So take the long view. Know when to kind of, okay, the long view. And also know when to go. In this very moment, liberation is possible. At least for that moment, it is possible. And then there's the next moment. And again, it's possible. And then there's the next moment, and then it's possible. Sometimes conditions come together. You experience it more directly, more clearly. This liberated state. Sometimes conditions aren't there. Then it becomes harder. But whether it's hard or it's easy, it's there.
Dr. Lye, I have a question.
Yeah.
So on that note, what do you recommend about popular media and movies and TV and Netflix, etc.? Do you recommend just ignoring it all? Because I noticed that all the new movies coming out are like different versions of a hellscape. It's like every
Yeah,
new.
they're kind of exciting.
I mean, but it's like I wonder if watching that is like rehearsing suffering.
I think it depends from person to person, and also then within that one single person, things will just also change, it all depends so much on what mind state you are when you are exposed to. This snow thing mm, gave me an excuse not to, drive down my driveway. So I'm doing work, but I'm also binging on. This is really kind of weird. On Max, I found these documentaries on cults, and all three of these cults, are headed by women. Yes, and so, yay, both men and women are very capable of becoming cult leaders. um, yeah, I watch, all three, and yeah, that kind of dark, but then you can also like, well, there you go. And you're like, okay, why am I watching them? No, I'm not researching how to, how to start or how to, I if you're curious, I've enjoyed watching them to truly, each time I watch them, I go, oh, see that one step they took in that direction, and how often at Dharma centers we come dangerously to that step. That's what I'm constantly thinking. Yeah. Luckily, at least in the Dharma centers that I've been involved in, there was no wholesale of taking that step, but I certainly have seen individuals taking that step, and how individuals, in a very limited individual way, experience some of the harm that comes from quote unquote cults, if we're not careful, you know. I mean, so much of what I was watching, like the strangest of these three documentaries. I don't know if you all have heard about this one one group that believed like this woman is God, the mother God cult. She has about like 10 followers as far as I could tell. And also in that documentary, it's very short, it's just 3 episodes. But yeah, somehow 10 or so very loyal disciples was convinced that she was God. And I mean, it ended very tragically, but and then I find myself, like the the immediate, kind of uneducated, I would say, and gut is like, oh my God, these people are so crazy. But then what I was trying to do is to step back and say, wait, that's the easy answer. And try to like understand, like why, right? What's going on in people's lives, and yeah. So, it depends on your mental, emotional state, how you're feeling about things. Some of us maybe, yeah, less of these, and I'm talking about documentary, maybe movies a little bit easier, not to like get confused, There's like
Dr.
8 seasons of Outlander, That's not like zombie stuff. You can go rewatch it. Yeah,
You
I
mentioned,
myself I tend to like to watch like period series. Yeah. Either period or like fantastical, like Lord of the Rings. All the apocalypse stuff I'm like that I go watch these cults, and their apocalyptic stuff. Yes, Steve.
sorry to interrupt there, but a little while back you mentioned two sides of the same coin. If I understand it correctly, the one side of that coin is the understanding of reincarnation, some type of enduring aspect of self. And the
No,
other side
no
of the coin,
enduring aspect of self. Only chain of causes and effects. Yes, that's one side.
okay, so, and the other side is
Timelessness.
timelessness. Okay.
Linear time and timelessness. Linear time where past, present, and future cause and effect is unmistaken. And timelessness, selflessness, emptiness, on the other hand, they're not they're not opposed. They lie at the core of the Buddha's teachings as inseparable and non-dual.
Difficult concept.
To be realized by the heart, not thinking. And cannot be realized by thinking, can be actualized through discipline. And the various disciplines offered by the various Buddhist traditions, I believe, when skillfully taken and put into a process. And so you can work on the outer layer, avoiding the 7 non-virtues of body and speech, and on the inner, paying attention to the 3 non-virtues of mind. You do that. You do that, then you take at least one, if not a cluster of disciplines, whether it's the Tibetan Buddhist style of, the preliminaries, or deity yoga, or Soto Zen, staring at the wall, or, whatever, a set of discipline with clear understanding of the Buddha's teachings, and observing, cultivating the 10 virtues, overcoming, putting aside the 10 non-virtues. That's the method for realizing the inseparability of linear time, and timelessness.
That's serious stuff. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, sure. Mhm. Other questions or comments? I don't have any plan, lesson plan.
I've heard the 7 limb prayer referenced a lot. I wonder, but I don't really know, and maybe you just told us what it is. That the 7 that encompasses the whole journey, doing
No,
these
it's the
7
7
things?
that leads up to the taking hold of bodhicitta, paying homage, making offerings, confessing, so to say, rejoicing, requesting Buddhas to illuminate the world, to teach, requesting
Oh,
them not to leave, and then dedicating, channeling all our efforts to the awakening and the enlightenment of all beings. So these are the 7.
and so that is what those things are part of the whole process
No,
of really focusing on.
it's the ceremony leading up to taking hold of bodhicitta. Yeah, in this
Oh,
context.
in that context, it's a ceremony.
Well, it's yeah, it's 7 things that we should cultivate, as the basis for taking this vow, for taking hold of bodhicitta. And then these 7 aspects are then put into liturgical form, and then they are recited a lot, especially in Tibetan Buddhist ritual.
Dr. Lye, I shared one of those that with this class,
Mhm.
that we got from the Mipam Rinpoche, sorry, the Rain of Blessings, Shakyamuni Buddha,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
sadhana, and that we say anyway. I was wondering if you have one, if you have a liturgy that people at Urban Dharma practice.
The most common one that all Tibetan Buddhists use is from Samantabhadra's King of Aspiration prayers. The
Okay,
first 12 shlokas, the first 12 verses. I mean,
okay.
in various translations, That one, all Tibetan Buddhist traditions use that. Yeah.
So if people are curious, they could look it up online and find probably, I know I can usually find the liturgies
Yeah. Yeah.
where it's recited, it's just a recite, it's
Yes. Yes. So it's
prayer.
the 12 verses of this called the King of Aspiration prayers. So if you just Google King of Aspiration prayers, and then it's a longer text with like, I don't know, 60, 70 verses, but the first 12 is the 7.
I I'm sure I have the document on my laptop. I
Mhm.
saved a lot of the liturgies from Drigong
Mhm.
Dharmakirti,
Mhm.
so I'm
Yeah, it's in the opening and dedication booklet of Drigong Dhammakirti. It's, I think we translate it as like a 7 limb or 7 branch worship.
Uh-huh.
right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's yeah, but it exists in plenty, you know, translations. Uh, But the Tibetan original, which is based on the Sanskrit original, it's the same. Yeah. Then there are
Do you want to share?
various shorter, um, prayers of those 7.
Do you want me to share that with the group?
Yeah, sure. And again, I'm just saying that there are many ones out there. Basically, it's the 12 verses, in which out of the 7 elements in those 12 verses, verse 12, 11, 10, 9, and 8. 12, 11, 10, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. They each have one verse. But the paying homage and the making of offerings, they each have more verses. 3 or 4 for the first, 3 or 4 for the second, and then the other 5 has 5. So that's what makes 12. There's another one that is very famous, commonly used again across Tibetan traditions, is these 7 elements, one verse each. And it's associated with the Tara, 21 Tara
Mhm.
chant, preceding the 21 Tara chant. Often these 7 verses are chanted.
I want to say one more thing about joy. Go back to that for a second,
Yeah.
because I think the other word you could use for what I'm talking about is like appreciation
Mm-hmm.
rather than happiness, It's just like realizing that in this world that is so confused, we have been given actually a tried and true,
Mm-hmm.
tested by millions of people,
Mm-hmm.
practical, achievable, process. And all we have to do is do it. It's just like, not that doing it is all that easy, but but gee, why not? Why not at least try or something like that? And so that kind of attitude, instead of like, oh no, I have to finish this number of things, or I have to, I'm not a good person, or they won't like me if I don't, blah, 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 or any of the other neurotic things that can trip you up. Um, that's what Anna Cox used to say to us, that Buddha gave us something you can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's the miracle of it. It's just something you can do.
And also go to therapy.
And also go to therapy. Absolutely. She was a therapist before she
Right, right.
retired. So she brought
Otherwise,
that back.
dharma becomes poison.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just act out our stuff
Right.
with dharma. Just new fodder, for old disease.
Yeah. Exactly. And when I'm teaching a person to meditate, because a lot of people come to EBS for the first time, that I want to know how to meditate, and
Right.
it's part of what the standard instruction is. Look, if you're paralyzed by anxiety, you need a therapist. This is not going to fix that for you.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah, because of how Buddhist practice is in this country, more often than not, has a semantic field, that is on the health and wellness side rather than the
right,
discipline
that's
and
right.
religion side, and there's many reasons why it's on this side, but it's not exactly a substitute for.
No, and that's the other thing I have to tell them. It's not the meditation you run into in your yoga class or in your cancer ward or in your natural birth group or whatever is not the same as this. This is about curiosity and learning things, not managing your emotions, or your mind. But anyway, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Let me say it that way.
Yes.
One of the things I really have been focusing on lately is how deeply ingrained in me when I meditate is that I'm trying to get rid of some tension, some uncomfortable feeling, and that I got it wrong. That's not the reason that I should be sitting. It's just to see what's here.
Right.
And I kind of know that in my head, but oh my God, I don't know it very deeply.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's to help us develop skill. Skill, what does it mean in this context? It means to not come under the power of the three poisons and the other mental defilements that arise from the three poisons. So whatever method that can help us develop the skill to not come under the power of the three poisons and the attendant mental defilements, that's the practice that we need.
What are the three poisons, if you don't mind sharing?
The three poisons, out of basic ignorance, confusion, arises attachment and aversion. They are the root cause of confused existence, the wandering on, the endless wandering on, which is what samsara literally means, the endless wandering on. And in this system, all who wander are lost. Out of these three poisons, then everything else. Then there's the 5 afflictive emotions, which is these 3 plus 2, and then they proliferate from there.
I have noticed there are a lot of lists.
Oh, yes.
Very true.
Yes, other religions struggle with God, goddess. We struggle with lists. Partly because of these methodical analysis of both mind and matter. And so giving it some, seeming correspondence with what in the West would be considered like science, These kind of paying close attention to various nuances in one's experience, in one's mind, and one's reaction to what is being experienced. Ultimately, that's where these lists kind of come from. Then, of course, at some point, then it gets out of hand when people got too excited with, lists. There was a Indian professor, economics professor, that I met years ago when I was in graduate school. He joked about how he said in other cultures, he said people count the number of whatever they are counting, and they arrive at the number based on counting what's out there. He says in India, he says, we come up with the number first, then we go look for the things to fill up those numbers. So it's 108, it's 9. Numerology, it's like, so 108, so now you need to go find 108 of whatever,
What is the 108? Do you know the root of that? I was trying to figure that out the other day. I don't know.
It's a pre-Buddhist, it's an Indic, and so, I mean, what's obvious is, not so obvious perhaps, it's like, right, one way of counting them 108 is 9 times 12, so 9 is like the highest number, so to say, and then 12 is like the 12 months of a year, so some sense of like a lot,
Yeah.
But in Buddhist texts, I have come across, old, not contemporary, kind of creative attempts to, again, to load it with meaning, again,
Yeah.
the number came first. For whatever reason, it's in the consciousness of people. 108 is like infinity, it's a lot, Generally, that's what it connotes. It connotes, 9 is the highest number, 12 months of the year is very complete, it covers all the bases, and la la la. So some references that I come across, in one case, this is a Chinese case, Buddhist, so it's based on this number, and it says in a very important Zen text, actually, it says, like the 6th lineage master, we would call that, but in the Zen tradition, they call it patriarch. The 6th patriarch, Huineng, in one of his lectures he gave, he said, it is said that Amitabha's Pure Land lays 108 yojanas, a measure, a unit of measurement, 108,000 yojanas from here westwards. So then he says, this is not to be taken literally. He says, so if you measure 100,000 yojanas, you're not going to get there. It says, what this 800,000, yeah, what this 108 is, he says, it is the 108, the 10, 10, he says, is the 10 non-virtues. And the 8 is the 8 of the 8 directions. He says, when you leap across these 10 non-virtues of the 8 directions, and then the 3 zeros, yeah, if I remember correctly, he says is past, present, and future. Then you arrive at Amitabha's Pure Land. And he says, and that can be done in one moment. Yeah.
Among Buddhist baseball fans, it's well known that there's 108 stitches on a baseball. Make of that what you will.
Yes. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
That's funny.
So anyway, I think I have to go now, and we'll see. The goal is, as I said last week, basically my Sundays, sometimes possible, sometimes not possible, depends on what else is going on. Because sandwich between two things that I normally do on Sundays is the cleansing offering at the center, and then my family commitments in the afternoon. So sandwich in between. Sometimes I'm responsible for the family gathering food. Sometimes I have to go to cleansing.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I use the other two to explain why I'm not at the third.
Well, we love it when you choose us, because it's great having you here.
Yeah, we're grateful. But so for next week, whether you're here or not, we could just among ourselves go back and read line by line.
Yeah, 3.
Chapter 3
Yeah.
and talk about it. And we have your commentary from your earlier teaching on this book to look at.
Right. Yeah, so on the Dragon Dhammakirti YouTube channel, there is a lot of videos
Yeah, that's right.
on this series. Yeah.
Okay.
Really more, I think, once you are finished with chapter 3, then like the real kind of, the real, but then, less poetic, more, it's starting from 4. Yeah.
Okay.
4 to 5 are the two mental qualities, the two mental qualities to develop in order to support the disciplined conduct. Yeah. And then after those 2 chapters are the other 4 of the 6 perfections or the 6 paramitas. Up to chapter 3, it is said to be the paramita of giving or generosity.
Okay.
Yeah, so chapter 1 is like an introduction to how wonderful bodhicitta is. And then in order to actualize bodhicitta, you need the 6 perfections or paramitas. So the offering and the confession, offering, confession, taking hold, that is said to be the perfection of giving. Then chapter 4 and 5 are 2 essential mental strength, mental skill to develop in order to be able to have disciplined conduct, often translated as morality, or these days ethical conduct. I don't like both of those translations. I do disciplined conduct derived from the Tibetan Sutram. So the Tibetans also made some decisions when they translated the Sanskrit Shila into Sutram. Sutram is more literally disciplined conduct. Now, of course, it covers what we normally talk about as morality, as ethics, but it's really more than that. Morality and ethics is there as the core, but it also includes what we would call conduct, deportment, how you kind of carry yourself in the world, discipline. Then after that is the 4 other paramitas, the paramita of patience, diligence, mental concentration, and wisdom. Then the conclusion chapter. So 10 chapters altogether. Okay, bye-bye, Tata.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.